since you first took the oath at sunrise.
I paid my due bill. Konstantin Horvath is not going to accept the appointment.
A legend in Hollywood, the man who earned $12, Glenn Ford, died by himself in his mansion, broke and forgotten Point Million, and dated Marilyn Monroe, who was hardly able to walk in his last years. His ex-wives took everything away from him when he had stroke after stroke, and his son hardly visited, and the hidden diaries discovered after his passing disclosed a startling fact that no one was aware of. From movie star to this is the tragic tale of the lonely old man that Hollywood would like you to be aware that Glenn Ford was born in Quebec City, Canada, on May 1, 1916. Gwilyn Samuel Newton Ford was his real name, and he was raised in a household with strong historical ties to Canada. His father was a railroad boss, and his Sir John Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, was a great-uncle. Glenn's heritage gave him a calm power that would eventually contribute to his charisma on screen. Even after he became a well-known Hollywood celebrity, but people could still discern a hint of his cool, collected. Having grown up in the North, Glenn's family relocated to Santa Monica, California, when he was 7 years old. He attended high school there, and it was in those classrooms and school plays that his life began to alter. That he discovered his passion for performing. He wasn't ostentatious. People characterized him as he was reticent and maybe a little uncomfortable, but there was something sincere about him. He wasted little time in starting a career in theater after graduating. He was resolute in the silence, performing with tiny groups all around California and even trying his hand at Broadway. Pursuing a dream that was yet in the early stages of development, years laid the groundwork for a career spanning more than 50 years. 100 red movies, but Glenn wasn't only serious about his father's acting. Had agreed that he could pursue his acting career, but only if Glenn took that counsel seriously and first studied practical skills. How to construct homes, repair plumbing, cable, and electrical. That most Hollywood, even when he was at the height of his career, he would be repairing. That he wasn't pounding together a roof or using air conditioning at home for demonstrate his true aptitude. He could have earned a living as a builder if acting hadn't worked out for him. Hollywood rarely saw someone with his practical side, and it kept him centered when others got lost, but becoming famous wasn't. Glenn's first significant film appearance came in Heaven with a Barbed Wire in 1939. Barrier, but what ought to have been a moment of pride instead became a terrible thing. He was humiliated on set by director Ricardo Cortez, who tore into his performance, and he referred to Glenn as a mistake in front of everyone, saying he never should have been cast. It was a terrible and memorable public experience that broke him. Most actors would have left, but Glenn stayed with that anguish instead. Proceeded to prove Cortez incorrect in each role that followed. That early he was hardened rather than broken by humiliation, and later that year, something significant happened. Occurred that Glenn got a 7-year contract after being discovered by talent scout Tom Moore. Agreement with Columbia Pictures that was significant, as performers were often not under contract in Columbia, but Glenn had everything they desired, despite the fact that his name didn't fit the stereotype of Glenn Ford from Hollywood. Harry Kahn, the studio's boss, said it wouldn't fly, so he became Glenn Ford. Glenn Ford, the name derived from his father's city, was what the studio had done before they transformed Margarita Canino into. He didn't oppose Rita Worth and Harriet Lake's transformation into and Southern Glenn. Comprehended the game at the moment, and he was matched with another new person. William Holden. In 1939, studio head Harry Kahn signed Glenn Ford and William Holden to Columbia Pictures. Had mayhem as his only goal, and he wanted two driven young actors trapped in a furious rivalry. He believed he would have more if they competed over all the roles. Control, but rather than becoming adversaries, the scheme blew up in his face. After exchanging jokes, stories, and even an audition, Ford and Holden became best friends. Techniques such as placing paper under their shoes to make them appear taller, their bond would endure for more than 40 years, until Holden's passing in 1981. They were meant to compete, but together, they became two of Columbia's most talented individuals. Ford didn't begin with big hits. Instead, he trudged through Columbia's never-ending supply of B films, the kind of low-budget productions designed to fill in double features following a minor part at My Son is Guilty was Fox Ford's Columbia debut, followed by forgettable titles such as The Sensational Babies and Convicted Woman. Men Without Souls for Ford portrayed a reporter attempting to uncover illicit baby selling in that one. The Ring was noisy and rough, with the intention of shocking. These weren't attractive jobs, but they taught him everything, including timing, presence, and pacing, yet he received no praise. He received experience in those early days, and Ford was training to become making news behind the scenes on the lady in question's set as well. Fell in love with Rita Worth. They had a chemistry that was explosive, but Ford's involvement with Evil and Keys continued at the same time as studio chief Harry Kahn attempted to shut everything down, including bugging their changing rooms, but it didn't. Ford loyal technicians informed them, and the scandal proceeded. In years later, Ford's own son would disclose that his father maintained meticulous documents of more than 146 lovers, including some co-stars. He even began monitoring his own phone conversations in private and turning into the kind of man he once had to outsmart his on-screen personas because his off-screen life remained dramatic. Ironically, Ford eventually scored a breakthrough role after beginning to shine in Texas. The Desperado, Columbia's first Technicolor film, followed Holden. For a company that used to think of Ford as a second-rate film, it was a huge deal. Played a fast-drawing criminal who narrowly avoided a heist at a bank. It was noisy, vibrant and action-packed. Despite Randolph Scott receiving high marks from critics, many viewers were aware that Ford's charismatic and tough performance was the highlight of the event. Demonstrated that he was prepared for greater things, but right when it appeared that settling in, Ford left, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Despite a deferment, he joined the Coast Guard Auxiliary in order to serve, and later that he didn't take any quick cuts after Pearl Harbor. He trained, served, and later worked in the Marines film section, where he assisted in creating public service announcements and training videos. After serving in the military, he even collaborated with Tyrone Power on a radio program during the war. After nearly 3 years in the Navy and suffering from excruciating stomach ulcers, Glenn Ford was eventually released on exactly 3 years after Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1944, Ford received multiple military medals despite not having seen direct action, but he served in the military and remained in the Naval Reserve until the Vietnam War. He finally rose to the position of captain, but upon his return to Hollywood, he was but another forgotten actor attempting to begin his career anew, which altered the instant B. Davis selected him to be the star. Davis played twin sisters battling over the stolen life with her. Audiences took notice of Ford's character, and critics commended his charisma, and Ford abruptly stopped making low-budget movies. Then came the part that Gilda, who played opposite Rita Hayworth, made him a true star. The screen was electrified by Ford's calm intensity, and their chemistry was more than simply a performance. The two were involved in a real-life relationship that would last for decades. Every look and uncomfortable moment they had felt genuine and unfiltered, and Gilda didn't just enhance his career by establishing his reputation as a man who could stand by even the most powerful celebrities, such as Ford wasn't ostentatious or loud. He didn't have to be. His strength was in his lack of claim. That Ford, in contrast to other prominent men of the era, eschewed big performances. He valued nuance. A glance or a pause may convey more. Rather than a lengthy monologue, this quiet assurance became his signature and brought him the known as the King of Cool. Critics were occasionally uncertain about his strategy, but the audience adored it because his characters were relatable and not invincible. He was one of the most bankable celebrities from the 1940s through the 1950s because of his honesty. In the 1960s, his cool, collected manner peaked in the intense heat where he portrayed Ford, a detective whose wife is killed in a vehicle bomb intended for him. Didn't overreact. Instead, he allowed the anguish to boil beneath the surface, causing his retaliation felt much more intimate since he was a man who was pushed, not a Superman. Too far. One of the most memorable occasions was when he partnered with Gloria Graham, portrays a disfigured woman who brings down the guilty culprits. Because neither character had anything left to lose, their encounters together were very intense and compelling. It was one of Then Came Blackboard Jungle, one of Ford's most unvarnished performances. Ford portrayed a combat veteran who became a teacher in a classroom full of aggressive teens, but the scenario wasn't the only one. That garnered media attention was the rock and roll music that Ford's youngster loved. Introduced him to a Bill Haley song, which ultimately appeared in the movie's opening credits. A new era began as soon as Rock Around the Clock started playing. The song hit the charts, and teenagers went crazy, dancing in the aisles. Ford's involvement in the event that catapulted rock music into the mainstream. Senators debated it behind the scenes, cities banned the movie, and theaters ready for mayhem. Ford was once more caught in the midst of a In 3:10 to Yuma. Ford changed the course of what a Western was. He portrayed Ben Wade, an outlaw with charm and nuance, not only as a villain. Another criminal brandishing a gun, you could almost cheer him on, was uncommon in those days. To witness such a multi-layered Western character, and Ford did it with ease. He wasn't attempting to surpass everyone, he just gave his characters a sense of realism even when they weren't. Not content to stop there, Dangerous Ford produced almost 24 Westerns throughout his, establishing a reputation in the workplace that was comparable to John Wayne's, but where Wayne went all out, while Ford remained silent. His idols weren't always confident in themselves. They questioned, hesitated, and made mistakes, which is what caused them to true. He once remarked that the secret to his success was that he preferred to remove lines from his screenplays rather than add more. Style say less, mean more about his commitment. Ford performed many of his own stunts in Westerns, which went beyond acting. He had mastered Ride from Actual Cowboys, and was revealed that he sustained severe injuries in multiple crashes. Shattered his ribs and tore his back during a land rush scene. Another time, he almost got trampled when attempting to save a crew member during a stampede, but he didn't retreat. Ford wasn't interested in. Ford performed a role in The Fastest Gun Alive, which was about being one like a cowboy. Quiet store owner with a secret history as a lethal shooter. It wasn't only about Ford's character didn't desire fame, and the shooting was about what it meant to bear that type of responsibility. However, he was always in trouble. His performance struck a balance between terror and skill. Pride with remorse, and when he eventually demonstrated how quickly he could sketch the audience and town held its breath until The Sheep Man, a Western with a Ford's portrayal of a sheep farmer who enters cattle territory and starts causing trouble right away, could have been simply another narrative about a dusty standoff, but Ford made it interesting and funny. Without sacrificing the gritty quality of a Western, he got spectators' laugh. His rapport with his scenes with a young Leslie Nielsen were made more romantic by Shirley Mann. Created tension. The movie wasn't merely a success, it was evidence that Ford could. Glenn Ford consistently portrayed the good guy in Westerns, whether they were humorous or serious. Screen the quiet hero, the trustworthy friend, and the dependable everyman, but he was leading a very covert and intricate double life behind closed doors. That nobody ever saw it, not even his lovers, spouses, or friends. Following Ford's death in 2006, his son Peter found a number of diaries. However, they were not your typical notebooks, rather, they were meticulous daily logs of each and every love experience Glenn has had, dating back to he began having an affair with co-star Rita Worth in 1945 while he was filming Gilda. Started, and he immediately began recording each victory he made. Over the course of 4 decades, Ford filled these journals with every name, location, and information. Featuring interactions with 146 women, almost all of them are actresses, many of they were famous, and he was recording entire scenarios rather than simply names. Occurred where it did, how he felt, and even how he attacked them. Shocking Marilyn Monroe's one-night stand, which is said to have occurred in his Beverly Hills home on the couch later. That same couch was put up for sale by, however, the most enduring and passionate relationship that one remained involved in. Rita Worth intermittently dated for 40 years. At one point, he even purchased and constructed a special gate between her house and hers in order to enter covertly. He was so dedicated to her and to the cause that he went out without anyone noticing. Secret. His pen and paper fixation continued until 1946, when he constructed a concealed recording device in his house to monitor his own activities rather than spy on others. Eleanor Powell, his wife, was afraid she would find out about his infidelity. When this practice became more sinister, he began recording phone conversations containing exchanges between him and his own son. One reel discovered following Glenn Peters' discussions were tagged "Death." His anxiety had gotten so passionate to the point where he kept a record of everything and kept it from those who had known him, for all of the lovers who had spent decades with him were unaware, and when the tapes and diaries eventually came to light, Hollywood was rocked. Nobody realized that the silent actor had been recording them all along. The more weird the findings grew, the more Peter dug. Stripper and cult Ford was formerly listed as one of actress Liz Renee's top 5 boyfriends. That information previously registered in Glenn's journals, probably with a grade that corresponds to the diaries, were so detailed that Peter was able to determine not only when and where Glenn met a woman, but also what they did and Glenn's subsequent feelings. It resembled a private museum of memories. Well maintained and isolated from the outside world, but Glenn Ford's life wasn't. His other passion was military service, which included all bedrooms and secrets. Ford went above and beyond, in contrast to many celebrities who posed for photos with soldiers. After World War II, he walked on 2 tours in Vietnam from 1966 to 1968. Exploring filming spots in battle zones and accompanying Marine teams in while other actors were attending parties in active conflict zones. At the age of 50, Ford was squatting in muddy trenches. He even took part in 5 operations that were classified. Anything that he only ever said, "They asked me to go and I went," was given the Navy Commendation Medal for being present when bullets flew, not for show. Next followed one of the most bizarre twist of all. Occurred in 1952 when Ford went out drinking while filming in Europe. He woke up the following morning as a fresh recruit in the French military after spending one night in France. Yes, he had miraculously enlisted in the Foreign Legion while intoxicated. It took after 4 tense days of negotiating his release. The movie's producer eventually told the Legion that retaining Ford would cause production to stop and put more than 100. They only let him go after locals lost their jobs, but that wasn't the end of Ford. Became the only Hollywood actor to serve with both during his military adventures. The American Green Berets and the French Foreign Legion. While serving in Vietnam, despite being a worldwide celebrity, he voluntarily walked into danger while integrated with special forces. For all of this, he didn't simply applaud. He was awarded numerous medals by the U.S. Navy. He received France's Legion d'Honneur in 1992, over 50 years after leaving Vietnam. His military honors shelf appeared more impressive years after his combat duty.